On this episode of the Armchair Army podcast, I am absolutely thrilled to have KHQ's own Sean Owsley on the podcast. He is going to chop it up with me about some Seahawks football. We talked some Kenny Easley. He also spent some time in Knoxville, so I'm really pumped to hear his thoughts on the differences between the Tennessee and the SEC game days and the WSU and the Eastern game days, along with Boise State as well. So we are really pumped here at the Armchair Army to get that started. We also talk some college football. We are going into the regional roundup, and then we also go into some awesome armchair front lines as well, giving you the best betting lines of the week. So without further ado, let's roll. Without further ado, I am so pumped to get this started. We have KHQ's own Sean Owsley. Sean, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Clayton?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, not many people in Boise know who you are, but I know you are a big celebrity up in Spokane. So, how did you get started being an anchor, and I guess how did that start rolling? Did you always want to be an anchor, or?
Well, I don't know how it first came to me, but I was about a sophomore in high school, and I was born in Spokane, and my dad had been, I remember being like 3 years old and my mom carrying me into my dad's radio station. He worked in radio forever and was the number one DJ in town here in the 1980s on KDRK FM. So I think I was kind of always around it, and, I liked people and different stories, telling different stories, and I liked writing, and so it kind of all came together, and I said, I'm going to go after it. And, and I got out of college in 1992. It is not an easy career to break into, high demand for a small amount of jobs. And so, but I was from Spokane, had a few connections, interned during my senior year at Eastern Washington, and then got my foot in the door editing we used to edit videotape back then when I first started. I was making about $5 an hour, 17 hours a week. So.
Absolutely. You're almost a legacy at this point, right? I mean,
yeah, well,
Dad did it.
Yeah, just don't retire me too early, Clayton.
Absolutely.
I got years left, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll try to remember that. So I know that you spent some time in Knoxville when you first got started and got rolling. Did you ever get to go to any Tennessee games or anything like that?
And I tell you what, we love our football here. But down there, it's a different level. I know, down in Boise, man, they're all behind their football team. But I can tell you, Tennessee, I mean, it's a week-long event leading up to the game.
Right.
Like every day. And actually, when I went down for my job interview, one of the places they took me was to a Tennessee game. And you walk into Neyland Stadium there in Knoxville, and, it's seated at that time 107,000 people, and they're all wearing bright orange. That'll shock you for a second until you adjust.
Absolutely, especially being from Spokane. I mean, we've got Eastern and we got the Cougs, but I mean, being down south and seeing 107 people packed into a stadium, that's got to be a little like a shell shock moment, right?
You know what? It is electric in there, though. I mean, they are rabid fans. They know the history of their team, and the only thing I could really compare it to, I was lucky enough. Back in, I was a sideline reporter for KHQ for Washington State University, the Cougar football team in '97 that Ryan Leaf quarterbacked, and then they went to the Rose Bowl, and I got to go to the Rose Bowl in January of '98. Obviously, they lost in the nail-biter to Michigan, and Brian Greasy was the quarterback at that time. And so walking into the Rose Bowl, I think it was similar to that, walking into Neyland Stadium and seeing the Tennessee Volunteers. But I mean, there's nothing like getting 100,000 people together that are all in on a football game.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially rooting for one team. I mean, you see these bowl games, and they're half and half, 70-30, but I mean, 106,000 screaming fans for one team. That's crazy.
It is totally crazy. I tell you what, you walk in to a Tennessee Vols game wearing the opponent's color, you might not be walking back out.
Absolutely. It might as well be Oakland at that point, right?
That's right. Raider Nation, yeah.
Absolutely. So you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you to compare, but you did a great job. So you were in Knoxville. You got your start. You were there for a couple of years. You came back to Spokane, and you've been here ever since. You get recognized all the time, right? When you go out, do anything like that. Do you ever get tired of getting recognized?
Well, let me give you some perspective on that. It happens all the time now, and I'm never bothered by it because every time it happens, I'm like, well, I'm doing my job well, and if people are comfortable enough to say hi to me, it means they must, appreciate the job that we do as a team. And, I'm the youngest brother of three, and my oldest brother, him and I are both born on July 8th, but he's 8 years older. So he kind of always kept me in line. He still does to this day. And I don't look at myself any different as the kid who was roaming the North Spokane streets and really trying to just make his way. And I've never changed from that. I got to wear a suit and tie every day, obviously, for my job. The minute I'm not at work, I am in a wrinkled T-shirt off the bottom of the closet and a ball cap, usually.
Absolutely. Just an average Joe. I love it.
Average. I'm nobody.
After being on the TV for 15 years and seeing your face, you're like the people's mayor of Spokane, so I wouldn't call you nobody.
Yeah, but I'm not running for office anytime soon. I can tell you that. I can confirm that on your podcast right now.
All right, confirmed. Sean Owsley is not running for office.
Breaking news.
The Armchair Army breaking news. Armchair Army here. So besides that, you're a big Hawks fan. I know you're homegrown from Spokane. Did you grow up a Hawks fan, or is it kind of one of those things that everybody roots for the Hawks in Washington?
Well, from as long as I can remember, I was a Hawks fan. I was 6 years old their first season in 1976, so it was kind of real impressionable age at that time. That's when Jack Patera was the coach and Efren Herrera was the kicker, and obviously Jim Zorn to Steve Largent back in the Kingdom. I grew up on those memories and those magical plays, and they weren't a very successful team for the first 6-7 years of the franchise. And then, the Jim Zorn to Dave Craig transition, and they made it to the AFC Championship game. And my favorite player back then was Kenny Easley because, he would just lay a hit on guys, and they wouldn't come back in. And I also loved watching that Kurt Warner run the ball, the original Kurt Warner, not the one for the Rams, run the ball for the Seahawks. And I've suffered through years and years of not very good football to get where we are today, and obviously eventually stunning the Broncos and Peyton Manning in that Super Bowl a few years back, and to be a consistently good team year in and year out. It's a different operating field compared to me growing up watching the Hawks. That's for sure.
And there's a thing that apparently, the Seahawks fans are bandwagon fans, but I don't think they understand that we had to watch Charlie Whitehurst for 3 years.
Hey, I could go down the list for you. We had Stan Gelbaugh in 92. Rick Meyer was drafted. He didn't work out. Dan McGuire, the brother of Major Leaguer Mark McGuire, was drafted. He was 6'10", didn't work out. We've gone through some quarterbacks, and trust me, I love watching Russell Wilson because that guy is an absolute player and a playmaker. And I think, it's just his level of play on a consistent basis, something, that's been hit and miss in Seahawks quarterback history for sure.
Absolutely. It's nice to have a franchise quarterback that we can always trust, especially this year since he's running for his life. My next question, the Hawks outlook this season, it looked really bleak for a while there with our offensive line struggling. How do you think this is going to end up? Are we going to make the playoffs? What's your thinking?
Here's what I think. The offense really, they always start slow every season. They're 1-1, 1-2, and then they go on a run the second half of the season. It's like something clicks. That's a dangerous game to play because if it doesn't click, then you're behind the eight ball and you're scrambling to try to get in. I can tell you, it's been a struggle on offense. Defense is the Legion of Boom. They are lights out almost every single game. But the offense is really struggling. And the offensive line play, I know it's been talked about for years, but, they've had so many injuries. They had George Fant, who was supposed to be the starting left tackle, go out in preseason with a season-ending injury, that was huge. And then they've had other injuries, and they're shuffling the line. And really, if Russell Wilson is not one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the NFL right now, the sacks are racking up because that line is leaky. And I think the bottom line is they're trying to address it. They've gone to more of a hurry-up style offense, getting the ball out quick. That'll save Russell a little bit from those hits that he's been taking. I like what I saw last Sunday. It almost looked like they have started to turn that corner again. I mean, you go cross-country to play New York. Obviously, they've had some serious injuries with the loss of Odell Beckham for the year and Brandon Marshall for the year. They don't really have a semblance of a running game there, but we're in a dogfight. The offense for the Hawks was putrid in the first half, and then in the second half, it's like they saw something. They made some adjustments, and it started to click. You started to see what we've seen over the last couple of years. Russell Wilson, those deep bombs down the middle to Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham catching a touchdown, although he had some critical drops in that game. So I think it's a work in progress, but I ultimately believe defense wins championships, and I think our defense is so good it would be a stunner if they didn't at least make the postseason or go further.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Tom Cable, everybody gives him grief, but from where the offensive line seems to start at every year and where they seem to end is night and day. So you got to give him a little bit of credit moving forward. So we are actually going to move into some rapid-fire questions, Sean. So you're going to have 10 seconds to answer each of these questions, 3 questions, real quick. Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready, but I will fire away. I'll fire back at you. Go ahead.
All right. What most famous person on your phone?
Most famous person on my phone? That's Mark Rippon.
Rippon. Have you ever swore on air?
No.
Bullshit.
But close.
Person you want to play yourself in a movie?
Who would play me in a movie?
Who would play you in a movie?
Well, if I'm aiming for the moon, it's George Clooney. Well, if I'm aiming for the moon, it's George Clooney, but that's probably not going to happen.
Hey, you can. It's your show. It's your movie.
It'll be some B movie actor you've never heard of, most likely.
Hey, look what they did with Moneyball. I mean,
by the way, one of my all-time favorite movies. That comes on, and I stop what I'm doing and I watch it every time.
Brad Pitt in that movie is one of the best. And Billy Bean, I can tell you, he is not that good looking. I can just tell you that now.
So there's hope for my movie, right?
So yes, your B movie will probably make it.
All right, straight to video.
Exactly, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on. We greatly appreciate it. Invest Northwest, awesome show. I tune in and it's great. And mornings. KHQ, you know where to find them. Thank you.
Hey, Clayton, you're the man. And let me say, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and you got a lot of talent. Keep working at it, and, maybe you'll take my job before I'm ready to retire.
Hey, whenever you're ready to retire, call me up.
All right, most famous person on my phone now is Clayton Panzeri.
I appreciate that. Keep my number.
All right, will do. Take care.
Huge shout out to Sean Owsley for coming on the podcast. I was so excited to have him on, and he did not disappoint. So hopefully we have him on later in the year, talking some more Hawks, seeing how they're doing going into the playoffs, and just continue on our conversation with Sean. But we are going to actually transition over to our regional roundup for this week. We are going to start in Washington at UW. They are playing UCLA and a good Josh Rosen team. They're coming off a loss to Arizona State. Of course, they had a bye week last week, but they dropped in the rankings. They have not broken into the top 10 again yet, but they look to have a good win against UCLA at home in Seattle, and Jake Browning is trying to get off to a better start than he did. WSU, they are coming off their 28-0 win against Colorado, a very good Colorado team actually, and most people do not know that Colorado's been doing so well because they haven't done well in the Pac-12, but they have played some really good games and they've played teams close, so great win in Pullman, 28-0. Luke Falk struggled a little bit, but he should get back on track against Arizona. The front seven for WSU absolutely crushed it against Colorado, and Monta Offa continues to impress. So look for the Cougs to really start off strong in Arizona and in Tucson and play really, really well. So Moving forward to Oregon. Oregon plays Utah this week. They're coming off a 31-14 to UCLA, or 31-14 loss to UCLA. So they are going to play the Utes. So it is going to be an actually really good game. Not two contenders in the Pac-12, but two teams that are very formidable. So over to Oregon State. They are coming off a bye week. They play number 20 Stanford. They are 1-7 on the year, not having a great season, like I have discussed in our last podcast. But they're trying to get some momentum going into 2018 and start to get some playing time for some young kids there. And going into Utah, BYU. They are coming off a 33-17 loss to East Carolina. They're playing San Jose State this week. San Jose State has surprised a lot of people in the Mountain West, and they're actually competing pretty well. So it's going to be a toss-up. BYU is terrible this year, but San Jose State, they've played some teams tough. So I expect BYU to actually win this game just because they have better talent, but you never know with how many injuries they've had this year. And I've already discussed University of Utah and the Utes, but moving into Idaho, University of Idaho and the Vandals lost 61-21 to Missouri last week. Missouri put a 68 spot on the Vandals as they continue their last season at the FBS level, not having a great year, and they have to win 4 out of their last 5 to become bowl eligible as they only have 2 wins on the season. So they play Louisiana Monroe this week, and that should also not be a very good game, but we should see the Vandals try and get bowl eligible there. Moving down into Idaho, Boise State, they beat Wyoming 24-14 last week. Great win for Boise State as they beat the NFL prospect Josh Allen. Utah State this week, so that should be a really good game as well. Utah State has put a lot of points on the board. TCU still has not found a quarterback that they can use consistently as they're still using the 2-quarterback system. I have not seen a 2-quarterback system work this well. So it's going to be really interesting going forward and seeing how we're going to compete when a team starts putting a 40 spot on us instead of our defense carrying us through games. But shout out to DeAndre Pierce, first pick of his career. He picked Josh Allen off in the first quarter, and he is rolling right now. You see DeAndre Pierce all over the field with intercepting balls and also bringing the boom. So huge win for Boise State this week, but they play Utah State next week. And so that is going to be it for our regional roundup. So up next we have our armchair front lines. These are our 3 best lines of the week where we pick 3 best betting lines that you're going to want to look for going forward. My 3 that I chose are actually some that are going under the radar. So Florida, they play Georgia this week. Georgia, highly ranked top 5 team, but they're going into Gainesville as a 14-point favorite. I'm actually going to take Florida and take the points in this one because Florida, although they are banged up and they have dropped out of the top 25, I do not think Georgia and their quarterback situation is going to be able to drop 14 points and cover the spread over Florida. So this one's going to be a low-scoring game. 14 points is a lot of points to score when you're going up against a team that has a stout defensive front and also you're playing away from home. So definitely hostile environment to play in, and the Gators are 3-0 in their past 3 games against Georgia, so a little bit of a mind shift for the Georgia Bulldogs, but that is my first pick. And then my second pick is Penn State. They are a 6-point underdog going into Ohio State. I know it was about 7 weeks ago, but Oklahoma went into Ohio State and went in the shoe and beat down the Buckeyes. So I think Penn State, they're coming off a huge win against Michigan. Their confidence is going to be high. I think they're going to pull this one off. Being a 6-point underdog, man, that is a lot of points for a team that's ranked number 2 in the country. So I think Penn State takes the 6 points. I think Penn State's actually going to win this game on the road, and they are going to get this bet for you. So moving to our last pick of the night is TCU. They are 6.5-point favorites over Iowa State. Iowa State is ranked number 25, but TCU and Kenny Hill have been rolling. Their offense has scored 40 or more points in the past couple of games, so we should see them play really, really well, and I expect Kenny Hill to cover that 6.5 points at home and really play well against the Cyclones. Although the Cyclones have surprised a lot of people, not many people thought they would be competitive this year. So that will be a good primetime game to watch if you're not watching the Penn State and Ohio State game. That will do it for me here at the Armchair Army. We will see you guys next Monday. I actually might throw a special podcast up this weekend with host Miles Clifford of 60 Days of Living and Shane Larson from the Game Time Guru talking some NBA with me, and you never know what will come up with them. So we will have that for you on Saturday or Sunday, actually. Look out for that, but thank you for joining me. I just want to thank everybody who has supported me throughout this podcast, all of the texts I've gotten, all of the calls that I've gotten about this podcast. I love you guys. You guys have been absolutely awesome. With over 200 downloads in just 2 weeks, it's been really cool to see all the support that you guys have given me. So I will keep dropping these, and if you guys keep listening. So thank you so much again, and can't wait to hear you guys this weekend on Good Vibes, Bad Vibes on Twitter. And that will be all for me. Good night.